From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
It's a new year and a new tax season.
Well, one of the greatest challenges most farms have is the fact that their income fluctuates widely from year to year.
What that means for agricultural tax returns. USDA rolls out more money for independent meat processors as China tries to lift its COVID restrictions.
You know, them getting back to normal like we did, I think people will be out spending money, demand will grow.
How surging cases are impacting ag markets here at home. And West Coast lakes and reservoirs are on the rise as heavy rain and snow rolls in. The latest impacts on the drought right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. High winds and flooding rain slamming into the West Coast on Thursday, and more is on the way. The storm knocking out power to hundreds of thousands as the risk of mudslides continue to grow. An atmospheric river ushering in those heavy rains across much of the state. Now in the upper elevations, heavy snows were expected. Winds, they topped 100 miles per hour Wednesday, with the strongest located in the northern and central parts of California. Near San Francisco, homes were evacuated due to the risk of landslides.
We have sandbags, we have crews out everywhere. We're dealing with trying to clean up the mess from New Year's Eve still, but at the same time clearing storm drains, doing everything we can to make sure that we keep the people of this city safe.
By the time we get to the weekend, we'll be looking at two more major Pacific storm systems moving ashore. So as we speak at this moment, the water equivalency of the Sierra Nevada snowpack stands around 17 inches. That's about 175% of the early January average, and it gets us 2/3 of the way to what would be a normal snowpack by the time we get to April 1st. This is really looking good following 3 years of drought and 8 years of snowpack deficiency of the last 11.
Reservoirs are already on the rise. Lake Shasta is currently 34% full. However, over the next 10 days, it could rise another 40 to 50 feet, according to officials there. Folsom Lake, outside of Sacramento, is now 2/3 full and was rising at a foot an hour at one point. And take a look at the latest drought monitor. Drought persists in California, but currently none of the Golden State is classified in exceptional drought. Nationally, the situation is improving as well, with 30% of the lower 48 now free of drought or dryness. That's the most since mid to late September. Southern and central Kansas, along with Nebraska, continues to see the most exceptional drought coverage, although it has improved somewhat in places. Rain and mountain snows are pouring into the Golden State, and it doesn't look like things are slowing down anytime soon. Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joins us with the latest.
And it really is all thanks to this Pineapple Express here that's going to continue to inundate kind of the West Coast and more across the western half here of California. It's an atmospheric river. You can go ahead and call it a Pineapple Express as well. And this is what happens here. It's going to extend all the way from the Hawaiian Islands all the way up to the West Coast, which is why it gets that Pineapple Express, a name here. Nearly 4,000 miles is going to be the transport here. Some of that intense moisture all the way from the Hawaiian Islands, all the way across parts of the West Coast. And just look at the potential rainfall today, all the way through next week. The northern half of California could be measuring rainfall in parts of that area in feet. Meanwhile, the central and southern half of the state could be looking at anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of rain. Walking through the future radar here as we continue on here throughout the remainder of this week. We're going to be watching again waves of precipitation to inundate parts of California, especially the northern and central portions of the state, going to be looking at heavy pockets of rain. And Clinton, thanks for sharing this photo from your trip out to New Mexico. Cows are filling up on hay after a trip through a chute near Tucumcari. Parts of the area saw some rain earlier this week, but the region needs a lot more to refill reservoirs and provide irrigation water for the summer growing season. I'll have more in your AgDay forecast in just a few.
China will reopen the border with Hong Kong on Sunday for the first time in 3 years as it accelerates the unwinding of stringent COVID rules. However, COVID cases have been rapidly on the rise. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us with a look at how the markets are reacting. Michelle.
Clinton, demand concerns have been intensifying with the spike in COVID numbers in China and the idea the pandemic may get worse before it improves. That's been setting a negative tone across the energy sector, equities, and portions of the ag markets. The World Health Organization received updated data from China showing a nearly 50% increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations in the week up to January 1st. Deaths are also on the rise. China's GDP and other economic data is showing contraction, including the December Purchasing Managers Index with the fall in output for the fourth straight month. It is also negatively affecting energy demand.
We see most of that playing out in the crude oil market, and crude oil has just collapsed here to start the year. Kind of stabilized a little bit here on Thursday, but by and large, that seems to be where everybody gets the most excited. If China continues to start up and shut down, start up and shut down.
Now, for the ag markets, the China news is bearish short term due to the demand concerns, and China's pork price is down 31% for December, which backs that up. But it's also throwing caution on U.S. ag markets like cotton, grains, and hogs.
Big question right now is pork. We've got a lot of commercial selling hitting the pork market of late, so I think that is a concern.
However, longer term, China's easing its COVID restrictions after nearly 2.5 years in lockdown will translate into demand for goods, including food.
China, breaking out of their COVID restrictions in a longer term story, that's bullish to me. Where everyone keeps trying to make it a bearish story short term because of the number of COVID cases increasing. But, them getting back to normal like we did, I think people will be out spending money, demand will grow.
And China's demand for U.S. soybeans and meal have stayed strong throughout the pandemic, especially as the prices for soybeans are near $20 and meal has been near record highs. Traders are continuing to monitor this situation and are closely watching the spread of infections during China's week-long Lunar New Year holiday that begins on January 21st. The fear is the setbacks may keep the economy from recovering.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Traders have also been concerned about recession here in the U.S. and globally as a result of recent rate hikes by the Fed. Now, that was reinforced with the Fed minutes from the December meeting. Fed officials agreed the U.S. Central Bank should slow the pace of its aggressive interest rate increases to limit the risk to economic growth. But with the risk to inflation remaining elevated, there is no expectation of reducing the federal rate target range in 2023. A longtime Senate Ag Committee member and farm advocate, Senator Debbie Stabenow, says this will be her last term. Senator Stabenow says she will not seek re-election in 2024. Her last day will be January 3rd of 2025. Now, Stabenow says a new generation of leaders have inspired her, and she's decided to pass the torch. She began her political career back in 1974 at the age of 24 when she was elected to the Ingham County Commission in Lansing. She was the first woman elected to the Senate for the state of Michigan. Stabenow says she'll spend the next 2 years focusing on passing a new 5-year farm bill. The ag markets haven't had a good start to the new year, and Thursday continued that trend. We'll have analysis next with Ted Seifert. And later, yes, it's a new year, and that also means the start of tax season. An agricultural perspective from Tennessee in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator Closing Wheels provide quicker emergence and are more consistent in dry conditions than any other closing wheels. Order 12 to 16 rows today and qualify for free shipping or 20% off an end zone moisture management package.
A fresh jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows weekly jobless claims falling, now at their lowest level since September. Roughly 204,000 people applied for first-time unemployment, while claims for folks getting benefits for more than a week also dropped.
Today's monthly ADP employment survey, 200,000 jobs added. They're expecting 150. So it looks like for our discussion for still job growth, it does give the Fed the firepower of raising interest rates still in these next couple months.
Grains and livestock futures were mostly lower again on Thursday. Michelle Rook has details in Markets Now.
Thursday's market closes a mostly lower day except for some of the wheat contracts. Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge, is joining us, and we continue to see fund liquidation here to start the year. So what's been the major catalyst? It's really felt risk off here, Ted.
Yeah, a lot of risk off to start the year, Michelle. And, a lot of times we look for days of 3 when we see fund liquidation or risk
Right.
off days. This would mark day 3. Thursday would mark day 3. So we'll see if things can stabilize on Friday. They actually kind of started to towards the end of the day on Thursday. Catalyst, a lot of it is concern over the global economy. A lot of it is concern about what's going on in China. While China has lifted their zero COVID policy, you have reports of a lot of COVID activity happening in China, and a lot of people self-quarantining. And so the concern is that there's a much bigger problem happening over there. So a lot of the commodities that touch China, that are involved with trade with China, hogs, crude oil, soybeans, these markets have been hit especially hard here to start the year. It's been very evident in the fund liquidation that we've been talking about.
So you kind of alluded to it, but have we seen enough selling pressure here, or have we held support areas from a chart basis that are going to hold us?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. Again, we expect to see this in days of 3. Then we expect to see a bit of a pause. If we can't follow this up with a fairly strong Friday, I think the concern is that there might be more of this to come. This is much different than the pattern that we've been seeing for like the last 6 months, which is, we'll get a sharp down day, but then almost immediately after that, we'll turn it around and have a sharp rally and take back a lot of those losses. It's kept us in the sideways pattern for the last 6 months, sideways to slightly higher. But now we've put 3 very sharp down days together in a row. It has a bit of a different feeling to it, Michelle. So I don't know. I want to say that there's some bullish expectations for the report a week from today, next Thursday. But if we're not trading grain fundamentals right now, it might not matter what that report has to say if there's bigger factors at play right now.
Okay, we always talk about money flow being a thing that we don't understand that moves the markets, and that could have been the case here. Thanks so much for joining us, Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
For professional marketing advice specifically tailored to your needs, call Zaner Ag Hedge at 312-277-0113.
Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joining us here. And Andrew, as we talked about earlier, the drought monitor has changed so much here. We're looking at the past 4 weeks compared to today.
Yeah, just again, I broke apart the maps here and just zooming in here on the West Coast to take note of the 4 weeks ago versus today. The exceptional drought is no more in California. And again, zooming on in on this drought monitor, if you look closely at the right-hand side, that exceptional, the most extreme condition on the drought monitor map has been relieved. And it's all thanks to this atmospheric river, which continues to kind of inundate the West Coast. I took this from the NOAA climate site here, which takes into account the average number of days here with an atmospheric river. Those these darker blues, that's upwards of around 2.5 weeks there. Meanwhile, these lighter blues, they're an indication of just a few days. And if you look closely here at the western U.S., especially California, you don't really get into more than longer than about a week here for this atmospheric river. A little bit longer, though, up across parts of Washington. So again, it's not every year that we tap into this. And this is something that, again, that is bringing these wet conditions to parts of California. This Pineapple Express here, which is helping easing the drought situation. And in fact, as we go into next week, we're likely going to see a significant decrease here into the drought monitor for at least the northern half of California. Meanwhile, the heartland of the country really needs the moisture, and we're just going to miss out on it as we kind of have a west-east pattern shaping up for the west, or for the central and eastern half here of the country. Looking at your root zone map here, look at these deep blues here. This is an indication again of those heavy pockets of rain which continues out west. Meanwhile, dry across the central portion of the country, and more of kind of a neutral phase for the Great Lakes Midwestern states as well as parts of the East Coast. Walking through the jet stream, well, again, we're going to continue this Pineapple Express out west over the course throughout this weekend into next week. Meanwhile, the heartland of the country and the East Coast are going to mainly be dealing with the west to east pattern, more of a zonal pattern all the way through about the start of next week. And then it does look like by next weekend, we're going to be watching a nice ridge potentially building out west and working its way eastward. Let's take a look at your high temperatures for today. Teens up north, 60s the heartland of the country, 70s across the deep south. Let's look at temperatures this afternoon. Now let's take a look at your Ag Day select cities Going over to Napa, California, heavy rain, high 56 degrees. Warroad, Minnesota, morning clouds, afternoon sun, high 15. And Woodruff, South Carolina, sunny, high temperature 54 degrees.
USDA rolls out new money for small meat processors. We'll tell you where next. And later we sit down with some agricultural tax returns ahead of tax season. Today, in the country from Tennessee.
Got equipment to sell privately but tired of scams and hassles? Visit MachineryPete.com and click Sell Mine. MachineryPete.com, the simple and secure way to buy and sell equipment online.
The Secretary of Ag, Tom Vilsack, announcing another round of investments in meat processing on Thursday. The Secretary rolling out funding aimed at supporting the growth of domestic processors and increasing capacity through new and expanded independent facilities. The states you see on this map are seeing those additional dollars. USDA adding that the goal is to, quote, make agricultural markets more accessible, fair, competitive, and resilient for American farmers and ranchers. Meanwhile, the U.S. trade gap is now at its lowest point in more than 2 years. The latest data shows the U.S. trade deficit narrowing to $51.5 billion in November of 2022. Now that's the lowest since September of 2020. It was driven down by a decrease in the goods deficit and an increase in the services surplus. Total exports, they dropped 2% on the year to nearly $252 billion, while imports of goods and services fell 6.5% to $313 billion. Buying and selling all goes to the bottom line. Up next, a look at the challenges of agricultural tax returns in the country.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com. In the Country on AgDay is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, tax season is here, the time for us to get our returns ready and off to the IRS. University of Tennessee Extension specialists train accountants and tax preparers who then often work with farm families on income and tax issues. Charles Denny tells us more about the challenges of an agricultural return.
The court found that the partner claiming the deduction had no professional or educational experience in federal tax laws. Well, that's possible.
A hypothetical scenario, but a tax issue that could happen. The beginning of a new year is when we look at last year's income, run the numbers, and see if we owe or if we're getting money back. But before we file, many of us turn to these professionals for help, accountants and tax preparers. Teaching this workshop in Athens, Alan Galloway, a farm management specialist with UT Extension. Many in this group of experts will take what they learn here and then work with farm families to prepare their tax returns.
But there's going to be the action of keeping the records, that sort of thing is going to be the same no matter what type of farming you're involved in.
Galloway and other instructors talk about partnerships and business entities, trust and estates, and new tax legislation. Agriculture has experienced high input costs for farmers, what it takes to produce livestock and crops, items like fuel, fertilizer, and seed, and that creates challenges when it comes to taxes.
Well, one of the greatest challenges most farms have is the fact that their income fluctuates widely from year to year because of the changes in input costs, the changes in prices that they receive when they sell what they produce. And that creates an extra challenge for them of determining how best to, you might say, level out that type of income from year to year by adjusting things as they can.
UT Extension has teamed with the Tennessee Farm Bureau Federation and the IRS the past 62 years to conduct these workshops in all parts of the state. And they average about 750 participants each tax season.
Alice Ray with Farm Bureau advises producers on tax issues.
If we're not saving them the tax dollars that they're eligible for, then we're not doing our job. So this tax workshop each year I look forward to it because it's great information, always timely and up to date, and it just helps prepare us for that season.
These sessions are among a small number of seminars in Tennessee that focus on agriculture. These experts leave here with updated knowledge, ready to help all their clients, including farm families. On the farm and everywhere, taxes are a necessity, and so too is smart preparation. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles, and that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.